The Indianapolis Colts close out the 2025 NFL Draft with a couple of obvious picks and quite a few surprises as well. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Colts podcast. Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of horseshoehuddle.com. My partner, Jake Arthur, is the boots on the ground for the site. He is still at the facility right now, so I am tackling this post-draft show solo. So we're going to be diving into exactly what the Colts did on day 3 of this draft. I really like what they did. I think they did some really good things early, some very athletic players early in the day, and then they obviously dove into a couple of their needs later in day 3. So today we're going to commit the first 2 segments of today's show into everything day 3, everything undrafted free agency. And then in the final segment, we're going to dive into the remaining needs on the roster, what the Colts can do to still improve this team, and where there are still some holes on the team going forward. But let's kick off this episode with the 2 big draft picks, the 2 picks that were basically like the guys that were given draftable grades by the Colts. You know, typically, in my opinion, when it comes to the NFL draft, when teams are taking players in round 4 and round 5, those are guys they still have on their board. And then once you get into like round 6 and 7, that's just early undrafted free agency. So looking at those round 4 and 5 picks, Jalen Travis, offensive tackle, really interesting player. Really like what the Colts did with that pick. Jalen Travis, an outstanding athlete. Fantastic year last year at Iowa State, allowed 0 sacks, 6'8", 332 pounds, long arms, extremely explosive, ran a blazing fast 40-yard dash at the combine. Not the best agilities, but again, you kind of know what you're getting with a 4th-round pick there. And for me, when you look at Jalen Travis, you're kind of taking a second shot at the Blake Freeland development that the Colts, I don't want to say the Colts have missed on with Blake Freeland, but it's kind of like restarting that developmental path with Freeland not really getting much better or much playing time over the years. So you're kind of going for the same type of archetype, a big, imposing offensive tackle that has some explosive traits and can do some good things there on the outside. And you're hoping that, you know, restarting that clock, you can get what Blake Freeland hasn't really been able to develop into in his time with the Colts so far. So Jalen Travis, I really like, again, what he can do on the field. Good run blocker, imposing player, drives players out off the edge really well. And a thing with Travis that doesn't really get talked about too much is just the off-field is just fantastic with this guy. You know, we always highlight with these players, like when off-field stuff is like troubling for players. So I like when you get a player like Travis in a draft class where you can really just highlight the remarkable things this guy's done. He's won multiple awards for his community service work. He's a Princeton graduate, so a very, very smart guy as well. I think he's going to go for his law degree once he's done with his playing career. And I think he's interned with U.S. senators and stuff in the past as well. So Jalen Travis, one of my favorite backgrounds in this entire draft. I really like the person the Colts are getting here. And then again, you're getting a 6'8", 332-pound offensive tackle with explosive scores, explosive testing scores, and can move a little bit. So I like the developmental path that is there with Jalen Travis. I'm not saying that the Colts are certainly going to hit it because, look, when you're taking an offensive tackle on day 3 of the NFL draft, typically you're hoping at best that can be a swing tackle for you. You know, you're not really swinging for a long-term starter on day 3. But with Travis, I think, again, a 6'8" guy who moves well, tested really well, great off-field stuff, beloved for his 2 teams that he played for in college. I think that that's a safe bet. You know, I think that's a very safe bet that you're swinging for there. And you're hoping that this guy with, again, high character grades and everything can really develop for you. So Travis, now he's not the guard that we all probably expected there in round 4, but the Colts are going to add anything on the offensive line. I'm glad it is a player like Travis. I think I had him as a 5th round grade in the Indy Draft guide. But again, when it comes to offensive linemen, it's more of like a range of outcomes. Like last year I had Mac Gonsalves as a 5th round grade as well, but I was perfectly fine with the Colts taking him in round 3 because he was a big athletic tackle who had some good upside. I kind of feel similarly about Jalen Travis, where it's like, yeah, I had a 5th round grade, but taking him in the 4th, perfectly fine. I think he can be a good player for the Colts. Certainly a draftable player. So yeah, Jalen Travis, I think, could be a good developmental piece, and I think he's going to beat out Blake Freeland in camp and become the Colts' developmental swing tackle behind Matt Gonsalves. Whatever they do with Matt Gonsalves, I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But if Gonsalves is still the backup right tackle, I think Travis will be a developmental piece behind him. And if Gonsalves moves inside, then Travis will be the legit swing tackle next season. So we'll have to really see what happens with him there. And then arguably the best pick of the day for the Colts came in round 5 with DJ Giddens, the running back. Really, really fun pick there. This guy has some awesome testing numbers, over 210 pounds. Really good height, weight, speed guy, 4.42 in the 40-yard dash. Super high RAS. I think it was like the 9.8 this past draft season as well. And he's the guy who looks like Marlon Mack on film. And I don't know how that doesn't excite anybody here in Indianapolis, because just the sweet feet really stand out on film. I mean, you're watching a guy with an outstanding jump cut, a guy with good vision through the hole, and a guy who can just turn short runs into explosive plays for your offense. So, you're kind of taking what the Colts got in little pieces from Tyler Goodson these past few seasons, but you're putting this in a more consistent running back who can stay on his feet and just do it at a higher level. Giddens is also a pretty good pass catcher as well. I know he had a couple drops last season, but he was dealing with a wrist injury, so I'm not looking too much into that. But I think that he's a pretty good pass catcher that can turn, again, short passes into explosive plays for your offense. So, yeah, DJ Giddens is the guy who I probably would have taken a lot earlier. I would have probably pulled the trigger in round 4 on him, maybe even round 3, if I were a team with, some other needs filled. Because I just like those sweet feet. I like his vision. I like his ability to perform in a gun run system like the Colts run. So I really, really do like DJ Giddens. I think this is great value for him. And maybe he's not like the perfect second back for the Colts because the pass blocking is not perfect there, but I do think that he's going to be a really good complementary piece in this offense. I think he's a guy who can step in and just do some really good things. So yeah, Giddens, I just think that there's some really good play on film, and I think that he's a guy who can just step in from day one, get you some productive runs in the running game, and be a guy who can spell Jonathan Taylor at times. I'm not sure I see like the long-term potential of being like a starting running back or anything like that for the Colts, but if you're looking for a guy who can play behind Jonathan Taylor, I think he can certainly play behind him and do it at a very good level. So DJ Giddens was a running back I was pretty high on in this draft class, and I think he's going to do some really good things with the Colts. Another really interesting aspect is at Kansas State, I mean, their offense is really predicated on zone reads and QB run plays and stuff like that. The Colts are pretty based on that as well when you look at what their quarterback room is now with Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, and obviously the Riley Leonard pick, which we're going to talk about in a second. So you're adding a running back who's very used to a system like this and very comfortable in a system like this. So he fits the system, fits the team, is an explosive player that can create explosive plays for your offense, and can add a little bit of a pass catching element as well. So DJ Giddens is arguably the Colts' best pick of the day. Really like that pick there. And to get him in round 5, I think that's a really, really solid one right there. So overall, I like both those picks quite a bit. Rounds 4 and round 5, the Colts are swinging on 2 high-level athletes that can develop into maybe something more for the team down the road. But coming up, guys, we're going to dive into round 6 and 7, where the Colts kind of went away from the high-level athletes. A couple guys who, are fine athletes, perfectly adequate athletes, but experienced players that can probably add some depth and some special teams value, or maybe long-term potential at quarterback. We're going to talk about the final 3 picks of the day for the Indianapolis Colts coming up here in just a second.
As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner who works just as hard as you do. And that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can actually help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Alrighty, Locked On Colts every day as we are back recapping day 3 of the NFL Draft for the Indianapolis Colts. Again, to kick off day 3, they made life easy for me with some easy names to pronounce in Jalen Travis and DJ Giddens, but also, again, gave the team some very athletic upside guys there at offensive tackle and running back. To close out the day, the Colts went with quarterback Riley Leonard, the least surprising pick of the day for the Indianapolis Colts, defensive tackle Tim Smith from Alabama, and safety linebacker Hunter Wohler from Wisconsin. So kicking off with Riley Leonard, yes, I'm not the biggest Riley Leonard fan. I don't think many of you guys are big Riley Leonard fans, but it does make sense for what the Colts are looking for out of their clipboard holder for the foreseeable future. The Colts were looking for their new Sam Ehlinger, and when you look at Riley Leonard, it makes a ton of sense. It's very much the same archetype of player in terms of, a good runner, good mobility, by all accounts, a high character, experienced kid that teams and coaches speak very highly of. For me personally, I think Riley Leonard had some better moments at Duke than he did at Notre Dame this past season. I think there were some better flashes as a passer in his past than what we saw this past year at Notre Dame. But again, you're not really betting on Riley Leonard to be anything more than a QB 2 or 3 for the next 4 years. You need this guy to be your scout team quarterback, your player that your starters can rely on and lean on and have a good relationship with in the locker room. So it's really not that big. Again, when you get to round 6 and 7, we're talking about early undrafted free agency here. Riley Leonard's a quarterback who's going to be on a cheap contract for the next 4 years to hang out in the locker room and hopefully not see the field as much as Sam Ehlinger did in his 4 years in that exact same role the 4 years before. So I'm fine with it. Again, I would like to take a better shot on another player that might eventually become a starter for your team, but I'm happy for Leonard. He seems like a good kid. I think the call was really nice there, and we'll see what he can do. Hopefully he can just lock down that Sam Ehlinger role, have some fun moments in the preseason, and hopefully we never see him in the regular season. That's really my biggest takeaway here. It's hard to really go too crazy on a round 6 or 7 pick because they are what they are. These are guys who are fringe roster players at best, and you hope that you can maybe luck into a guy serving 4 years in the NFL for you at this point. So Riley Leonard, I think he can fill that Ehlinger role pretty well and do his thing there. So we'll see. I certainly think he's going to be on the team next year, and we'll see what happens after that. Tim Smith from Alabama, though, is probably my favorite pick of day 3 aside from DJ Giddens, because he's just a defensive tackle that knows how to stop the run. And I'm sorry, but we have not seen enough of that in Indy the last couple years. We've seen too much of Taven Bryan, of Raekwon Davis, of Eric Johnson, just a lot of guys who can't really stop the run behind Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner. And when you turn on Tim Smith's film, yes, this is not a high-end athlete. This is not a guy who is going to get you 10 sacks a season by any means. That's why he was still available in round 6, but he's a really good run stuffer who has experience playing across the defensive line. I saw snaps from him all the way out at 5 tech last year, all the way pushed in at 1 tech and 0 tech over the center. So I think he can play across the defensive line. He's a good run stuffer, has some pop in his pads, just stands up offensive lineman at the point of attack and holds his ground really well. I think Tim Smith has a good chance to make this team. I think he can be that Grover Stewart backup this next season and really push a guy like Neville Gallimore potentially off the roster. So Tim Smith, I think, is probably my favorite pick here on day 3. Again, Giddens is a fun one as well, but Smith just fits such a big need the Colts had in terms of getting that backup defensive tackle that can stop the run and just be a productive rotational player. I think Smith is a guy who can step in and just be a solid guy from day 1. So I certainly think that he is a player who can make this team and make this team better this next season. And then we get to Hunter Wohler, the most obvious Chris Ballard pick in the entire world. We're talking about a guy who played safety at Wisconsin, who's going to be moving to linebacker for the Colts. Pure special teams pick here. I don't expect him to really ever see the field in the NFL on defense, maybe in some like dime packages if you want to get some really like cutesy stuff out there with it. But yeah, Wohler is your next JoJo Doman, your next Sterling Weatherford, and we'll see if he can make the team. Always fun players, probably a player who I'll fall in love with in training camp and say needs to make the team no matter what. And then I'll be heartbroken when he's the last cut down and gets claimed by the Bears or someone like that. But yeah, Hunter Wohler is your next shot at the JoJo Domans and the Sterling Weatherford. So we'll see if he can end up making the team out of camp. I certainly expect him to be a decent special teamer. And look, the Colts lost Trevor Denbo this offseason because of his just awful injury he suffered last year. And Grant Stewart went to the Detroit Lions. So the Colts really just don't have that special teamer on the team to play up the middle. They have Doolin and Ballantyne, obviously, off the edges at gunner. But I do think Hunter Wohler can be kind of that interior special teamer there. We have some undrafted free agents. You guys can add them in the comments there if I don't have some players that have been updated while I've been recording here. But these are the undrafted free agents that I have seen connected to the Colts. We have Joe Evans, defensive tackle from UTSA. He's 6'2", 323 pounds with 33.5-inch arms. I watched a little bit of his film. I'm already in love. He's a massive guy. Play some one tech, play some zero tech. I'm all about it. I love me some big defensive tackles. Marshall Foner, offensive tackle from Minnesota State, 6'6", 303 pounds, 34.5-inch arms. Your new Jake Witt type guy that can play offensive tackle, big time developmental project, but I think he's probably like the biggest name that the Colts have signed in undrafted free agency so far. Ulysses Bentley, running back from Ole Miss, didn't test very well this offseason, but a Power 5 running back that's coming in here to get some camp work there. Landon Parker, wide receiver from Troy, absolute freak, the number 1 RAS receiver this offseason. Wasn't particularly productive at Troy this past year, but absolute freak, like 6'2", like 215, ran like a 6'6" 3-cone or something, just absolutely crazy. We'll see if that translates over to the practice field. Jonathan Edwards, the cornerback / safety from Tulane. He was a guy who I circled throughout the draft process as being a potential undrafted free agent fit because of his testing number, 6 foot 201, 32-inch arms, 4.42 40-yard dash. I don't think he's going to end up making the team for this Colts, but I think he could be a long-term developmental project at corner. The Colts could just stash out on the practice squad and see what he can be. He actually spent majority of his college career at Indiana State, so there was that connection to Indy, obviously there. Devonta Davis, defensive tackle from Florida Atlantic, 6'2", 300 pounds, 4.87 second 40 time. So really interesting there. Solomon DeShields, linebacker from Texas A&M, 6'1", 235, 4.62 40 time, and hit the 33-inch arms. So one of the longer arm linebacker prospects in a class with very short arm linebackers. And then there was a kicker and a punter as well. We got the kicker name here, Maddox Trujillo from Temple. And then Keydrain Callaghan, safety / corner from Louisiana Monroe. I think you said earlier, Patrick, that he was a tryout player. Yeah, that's a fun name, actually. I hope Keydrain ends up making the team there. But that's what we have so far for undrafted free agents coming to Indy. I don't really have full thoughts on the undrafted class yet, but I'm sure I will find at least one guy I'm absolutely in love with, and we'll see if they can even make it into camp. Sometimes I fall in love with these guys and they barely even make it out of the summer practices. But I think as of right now, I'm really leaning towards Joe Evans with that 323 pounds. I love me some big defensive tackles. And again, the Colts have not had many defensive linemen that could stop the run over the past couple years. So I'm very close to calling Joe Evans my undrafted free agent this offseason. But Landon Parker and Marshall Foner are like the two bigger guys right there as well. So I think those guys are the two guys with the best chance. Probably the two guys who got paid the most were Marshall Foner and Landon Parker. But we'll see on updates there when the Colts announce their full undrafted free agent class. But coming up, guys, the draft is over. All 7 rounds have been picked. Undrafted free agency is going on as I'm talking. Let's dive into what the Colts' biggest needs are going forward the rest of the offseason, because they still didn't address a couple of the needs on the roster. And when we're looking at some of these potential camp battles at these spots, it's looking a little bit dire. We're going to talk about that here in just a second.
The NBA playoffs are here. I don't have to tell you guys that, Pacers fans. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. I personally love FanDuel right now because I can bet on how bad the Pacers are going to stomp the Bucks in this series, how many shots that Hallie's going to land on Dame. Kidding, maybe. Maybe you're more of a traditional player prop person, like three-pointers, assists, whatever. FanDuel has got so many ways to bet on those favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine all those live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Alrighty, Locked On Colts Everydayers, we are back with our post-draft coverage for the Indianapolis Colts. And now we're talking about the biggest needs on the team's roster going forward after the draft. And I think the two biggest ones, obviously, are right guard and linebacker, the two positional needs that we basically all put behind tight end as the biggest needs on the team. The Colts really didn't address that in this draft. Now, I will say with the Jalen Travis pick at right tackle or offensive tackle, it might free up Matt Gonsalves to move in to be right guard. But as we talked about all offseason, we don't know how comfortable the Colts are about putting Gonsalves at that right guard spot. They didn't seem too enthused by it at the owners' meetings in Florida. Now, they have mentioned Tanner Bortolini potentially playing right guard in the past, but if they were to do that, then Danny Pinter would start at center, and I'm not too comfortable having Pinter plus Bortolini next to each other. You're talking about two really small guys next to each other on the interior. I just don't think that would really work out for the team. So yeah, as of right now, if they don't make any positional moves on the team to like put Gonsalves inside or put Bortolini at right guard or Pinter at right guard, God, please don't do that, but Pinter at right guard, we're looking at a camp competition right now of Dalton Tucker versus Antonio Mafi to be the starting right guard for the Colts next season. And that's just not going to fly. That's certainly not going to fly. I do think Tucker can be a rosterable player going forward and maybe be a key backup if he keeps developing. But I'm not going to sit here and say he's a starter. He should be in the conversation for starting. So if we're really looking at needs on the roster, right guard is a massive, massive need. And I think that they need to address that in free agency post-draft. Now, the Colts were waiting with free agency a little bit because they had two comp picks coming their way. So I believe tomorrow is the deadline to where the comp pick deadline is done. So the Colts are free to sign anybody without being too worried about about it affecting their comp picks. So as one of our commenters is saying right here, Brandon Sheriff, Shaq Mason, I think Dalton Reisner is still out there as well. These are not high-end guards by any means, but it's better than putting Dalton Tucker on the interior again. And I love Dalton Tucker, but we can't start him again after how it went downhill last season. So get a Brandon Sheriff in here. And heck, look, if Dalton Tucker comes into camp and beats Brandon Sheriff out, awesome. Then give it to Dalton Tucker. But I want to make sure that there is some competition there. And it's not just going to be handed to a Tucker or even a Matt Gonsalves, who we just don't know can play right guard going forward. So right guard is a massive need. And the last thing you want going into a season where you're not feeling great about quarterback is a major need on the offensive line. So I do think Brandon Sheriff should be on the phone. After they're done with all these undrafted free agents, you give Brandon Sheriff a call, get him here to Indy, and let's just be locked in for this next season there. So right guard is obviously the biggest need. And then the other big need is linebacker. Now, the Colts did contextualize this a little bit post-draft with how Lou Anarumo's system is going to be primarily in the nickel and dime packages. You're not going to have many sets with three linebackers on the field. And he also said that they're very high on Jalen Carlies, which that's all fine and dandy. I'm perfectly fine with being high on Carlies and also not feeling the need to add more linebackers because there's not going to be that many on the field at one time. The one thing I have an issue with is Carlies played like 6 games last season, and he was a former 5th-round pick. That's a lot of faith in a player who's not played a full season yet, who's being moved to an all new position. He's only spent 1 year of his career at linebacker. And, you're not really adding much competition to that. So, like, kind of giving the job to a guy who was a day 3 pick, who moved from safety to linebacker and didn't stay healthy his rookie season, that's a big stretch for me. I think he played some really good football when he played last year, but that's a big stretch for me. And I like Shea Alubi, I like Cam McGrone, but I don't think those guys are enough to push him in camp. So if it were up to me, going back to this comment here, I think I would go after like an Isaiah Simmons. I don't think Simmons is that great of a linebacker either, but at least it gives a guy with some experience to this Colts team to where you're not just relying on a position switch former day 3 guy who played 6 games last year. Like, I'm not trying to be too crazy about this. I like Jalen Carlies, but like, I don't know. When I heard that comment from him, I kind of lost my mind a little bit. I was like, we're putting a little too much on Jalen Carlies, even though I think there is reason to be optimistic about him. It's just, you can't be putting this much on such a young player who just wasn't healthy last year. So we'll see if that comes back to bite them in the butt like it typically does. Like Patrick says here, there's always one that comes back to bite them in the butt. And yeah, there's still, it's hard to really go too crazy right now about their needs because, again, as Patrick's saying here in the comments, like, you could still send a pick or something for Jermaine Pratt. You could still go sign Isaiah Simmons. So it's like, it's not the end of the world as of right now, but the Colts did just bypass one of their opportunities to make it better at linebacker. So we'll see if they pivot to something else here this offseason. The other position that I did want to shout out, though, as a need for the rest of the offseason is safety. I think safety is another spot where I really would have liked to have seen a pick there. Again, this is another spot where we could say, like, maybe we see a corner move back there to play some safety. Maybe they still have free agencies to address that. But as of right now at safety, we're looking at Cam Bynum and Nick Cross. And then a lot of guys that the Colts really don't like that much, and Rodney Thomas and Marcel Dabo, I think, is probably safety 4 at this point. Like, I do think the Colts need another notable name at safety to at least be a backup and a special teamer in case one of those 2 starters were to get hurt. So I do think that safety is an underrated need for this team the rest of the offseason. So we'll see if they put their resources at those positions in free agency, if they roll into camp with who they have right now, and if it bites them in the butt this next season. But I do think there are several needs on this team, especially right guard, but linebacker and safety as well. I certainly think the Colts could do something about those positions. But overall, I think this draft was fine. I'm not going to sit here and say this was some home run, like knock it out of the park, absolutely perfect draft for this Colts team. But, when I'm looking at it on paper, I think they got a good high floor with a pretty good ceiling in Tyler Warren. I really like their day 2 picks. Justin Wally's a player who I really came around to, and I really enjoyed watching his film. And I think that he might be a starter this next season. We'll see how camp goes, but I think Wally's a player the Colts are really high on. JT Tuimoloau. I'm eventually going to get that right. I think is a very, very high floor player who's going to be a great run defender and a really good cleanup player for them as well. Then you look at a couple of their day 3 picks in DJ Giddens, Tim Smith, Jalen Travis. I think they did some pretty good things there on day 3. So for me, when I look at this draft for the Colts, I think it's an experienced draft. I think it's a draft with a lot of guys who have played a ton of football, high floor players that can come in and serve a role for your team from day 1. I don't think this is a draft where the Colts are swinging for the fences, but I think it's a draft where they're swinging for certain roles. So, like, if you put a grade on it, like a C+, a B- is probably what I would give it, but I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, I don't know how many A+ you could really get in this kind of draft because I just don't think there was that much talent overall. But I really do enjoy some of the players they got. I think they're going to be really solid NFL players for a couple years. And I think this is going to be a perfectly fine draft. Not a great draft, but a perfectly fine draft. But you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Did Chris Ballard absolutely blow it? Or did the Tyler Warren pick obviously save all of it? Let me know in the comment section below. And we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day this week. Me and Jake have been up, I want to say, till like 3 a.m. the last couple nights with this draft coverage and just trying to get all this content to you guys. So We really appreciate you guys tuning in to Locked On Colts throughout this very hectic week, and also checking out our work over at horseshoehuddle.com. Again, it has been insane. I really wish the draft could be a little bit shorter some of these nights. I mean, it is absurd that this draft went until like 7 p.m. tonight from when it started at noon, but we chug along anyway. We just do what we can to get you guys that content. We really appreciate you guys tuning in every single day. Now for your second listen, though, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Those guys do a great job breaking everything down over there. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you guys don't already, please make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on socials. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here Monday afternoon for more post-draft coverage.